It doesn't say the guarantee of happiness.
Right.
It doesn't say, Richard and I will write a check to make sure that you're happy. It's the pursuit of happiness. What we need to do is provide an equal opportunity.
And what we're providing is the very first time a curse that mankind has lived under has ever been fought. We have lived under a curse that says, you are a serf and your grandchildren will be serfs because my heel will always be on your neck. No matter where, no matter what country, we will prevail over you because you're nothing. Until America said, wait 1 minute. If you can make the journey, if you can actually get here, if you can take what life throws at you, if you've got discipline and rigor and a sense of ambition, you might rise by merit in your own lifetime. And that was the most important message in the history of civilization. And it was heard in every corner of the world, and that's why people come here. That's why they'll always come here. And the fact is, our kids don't know what the hell I'm talking about because they're not taught about it anymore. They're not taught that we are a political miracle and that we are safe haven and that we are a second chance because nobody ever offered that before us.
Richard, what do you think created in the educational system the replacement of civics with perhaps more politically correct courses? What began that evolution, and why did we tolerate it?
Actually, I think the odd answer to that is civil service and bureaucracy. When people talk about big government and small government, what they're really talking about are bureaucracies that never die. And in the old days, the Democrats used to meet the ships at the dock and say, hello, my name is Jack O'Halloran, and I'm your district boss, and if you give me your vote, I'll give you a place to live and a job. And they'd fire the guys that were working under the Republicans, and they would give them that house and that job. And then civil service came in and said, nope, you can't fire anyone from now on. And the Democrats had no reason to meet anyone at the dock. And that's why this thing happened where we just hit the ceiling and stayed where we were. Hit the ceiling and stayed. There were ways that the culture has always had to give us an exit out and an exit up, and that was taken from us just around the turn of the century, the beginning of the 20th century. And ever since then, we have been bumping into furniture, not knowing what to do and where to go.
And I think as a society, we've embraced a political addiction, if you will, that is polarized. So we choose not to have a civil discourse. And I know within the context of the Dreyfuss Initiative, there's a heavy concentration on teaching people to have civil discussions. And I think that's of such paramount in importance to get back into the curriculum.
You know, people should remember that we never had civil discourse. What we had was uncivil discourse, but lots of time to get over it and lots of time to rethink things. And what happened was that our technology forced us closer and closer and closer so that it removed time from decision-making. And people only had yelling and screaming and uncivil behavior. Thomas Jefferson was as uncivil to John Adams as we are today, but there was time to let it smooth out. And now, with television and streaming and personal computing, we have no time to think, we have no time to take a breath. So all we have is yelling and screaming, and we've raised up public discourse to a new low.
You know, when you bring up Jefferson and Adams, while they had very strenuous arguments, they actually grew back together as friends, and coincidentally died on the same day, on the 4th of July.
I would wonder whether how sincere their friendship was. I would say that it would be a wonderful exercise to go back and redefine our founding fathers, that first generation, because there's no such thing as a generation of great men who are above party and above party differences. We just let them write their own biographies, and so they all wrote themselves as great angels.
No question about that. Now, if people want to get more information about the Dreyfuss Initiative, where can they go?
Here's what I've done. I've created 3 things: a curriculum of how to teach teacher and student, a way for what you learn in civics classes, the values you learn to get into the culture, and one thing more, even bigger. The curriculum is a curriculum of reason, logic, clarity of thought, and critical analysis, using civility, debate, dissent, context, and opposing views as exercises. You can use those in every classroom. I've created an American history play competition so that in every regional theater of the country, at the end of every season, you do a play about American history and you could win a financial prize of something in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's a good reason for writing a play.
Very good reason.
And third is, in all of the years since we've begun this country, there's never been an institute or research think tank to support Enlightenment values. And we now have a relationship with the George Washington family, and we have created out of their retreat in Charleston, West Virginia, an ongoing institute for the study of Enlightenment values, which are the values we learn in the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights: freedom of speech, freedom of expression. And that will outlive us all.
That's outstanding. Well, Richard, stick with us, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Dr. Lynn Goldfarb, Assistant Professor of Clinical Education at USC, and Scot Faulkner, world-renowned author, consultant, and former key member of the Reagan White House, and now Executive Director of the Dreyfuss Initiative. This is T.J. O'Hara, the Common Sense Czar, filling in for Rick Amato this evening with my guest in the studio, Richard Dreyfuss. And we are joined now by phone by Dr. Lynn Goldfarb, a San Diego resident who's also an assistant professor of clinical education, secondary social studies curriculum coordinator at the University of Southern California. Welcome to the show, Lynn.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is a pleasure having you here today. You know, Richard and I have been talking about the Dreyfuss Initiative and tangentially about the civics crisis in this country. You've been doing this for over 24 years, been involved in the public school, secondary social studies, environment district office coordinator for educational reform. You're at the front edge of this. How critical is this crisis at this point in time, and how important is the Dreyfuss Initiative?
The Dreyfuss Initiative is coming at a time in our public school system where we're seeing many, many challenges. We're seeing high percentages of dropout rates out of high school in different sections of the country. And we need to look at, once again, how to renew our responsibilities to this country, to democracy, to understanding what that involves as citizens and citizenship. And in the schools right now, we have so many curriculum standards that we are obligated to fulfill that we have almost in some respects let this piece drop out of our focus. And the Dreyfuss Initiative is bringing that back into focus.
So it's filling a vital gap that we have in our public school system at this point.
Yes, it is. And the curriculum that was created by the Dreyfuss Initiative is actually very complementary to what we do in schools. It's very easily integrated into what we can do in our schools, and it's very necessary and very, very, very important. And at this point, unfortunately and sadly, our students, our teenagers, don't understand what their role is in this country. And they do not only not understand it, they don't understand how they can affect change, what that responsibility could look like, and they don't really understand the workings of government anymore. And the youth, unfortunately, have become very disenfranchised, and they are indeed our future.
And how does that contribute to some of the dysfunctional political environment that we see today?
It's unfortunate when we look out there, for example, and we see the discourse that's going on, let's say, for example, with respect to our budget. Our students, this is a very rich context from which you can have many, many conversations and create very, very interesting discourse within our classrooms about understanding how did this come about, why is it that we're so polarized with respect to what one side wants, what the other side wants, and why is it that we're not able to come to some kind of conclusion that could be a win-win for the citizens in many respects in this country. And our students really don't understand why that is or how that's come about. And Richard mentioned this just a few minutes ago with respect to discourse. We don't do discourse anymore in classrooms. We don't necessarily critically challenge our students to think, to debate, to look at both sides of an issue, or to look at more than both sides of an issue and understand how to look at things not only critically, but creatively as well in order to come up with solutions.
And very quickly, because I know you're on a very tight time schedule, and I really appreciate your giving us a bit of your time this evening, but how has some of the change in the books impacted this? I know there's almost been a casual rewrite of history in some cases. What have you seen in the social studies environment that you've been exposed to?
It's very compartmentalized. I actually had the opportunity to work on a social studies text a number of years ago, and it's like sound bites of information. So it really doesn't get a student to look in depth at history, to understand all the different aspects of, for example, what went into the signing of the Declaration of Independence. It's very factual, it's very superficial, and then let's move on. And Richard had mentioned something about having the time to think. We're not giving our students the time to think and to delve deeply into subjects, and instead this was a revolution, now let's move on because we have to take a test.
Absolutely. I understand what you're saying. Anything else you'd like to add before I let you get back to the engagement that you were involved in?
I find this a very exciting time. I am very excited about what the Dreyfuss Initiative wants to accomplish, and it's extremely timely because every generation, and this isn't unique to what I'm about to say, President Lincoln said it on the eve of the Civil War, every generation has to renew its commitment to its democracy. And I really feel that the Dreyfuss Initiative and all the aspects about what it is bringing forward is once again reminding us that we have a lot of work to do in order to renew that commitment to the Constitution, to our Bill of Rights, and to democracy in this country.
Well, Dr. Goldfarb, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know it was asking a lot to have you step out of the engagement that you were involved in, but I certainly appreciate your time. Love to have you back on the show when we have a little more of your time. But thanks again for joining us, and we'll look forward to talking to you again sometime soon.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you so much for having me on.